afternoon, it's Andrea Taylor here. We are here today to look at Cherry Blossom Cord Magic, which is the first of the 4 days for Craft Alive Online. So welcome. This is an instructional information and video for you in how to use twisted wax cotton cord, and in the different thicknesses it comes in. We'll discuss that, but mainly we're here to make something from that cord. So we're looking at making little cherry blossoms and the process that involves making those. There's a variation of them, just like there is with everything. You can then go to cherry blossom necklaces and then cherry blossom brooches. So they're all based on the original same technique with variations. Okay, so let's have a look what we need to make one of these. We need little pieces of fabric, we need some cord, we need needle and thread, and we need a little bit of stuffing. So your fabric, I suggest, should be fabric that has a closer weave, not too open weave, because you'll get fraying around your stitches when you're stitching these together and then poking through to the other side, which is not really what you want. So you're looking at percale type fabric, batik type fabric works really well. Some of the Japanese sheeting fabrics, Liberties, things like that, that have a nice close weave. I have here the different stages of making your scissor keeper or your zipper pull, and this is one I have here that's already made, and it's hanging from this little pouch here. I'd love to have them hanging from little bags and pouches. It makes it easier as the hands get more arthritis in them to open up your various tool cases. Okay, so we have our fabric here and we have our cord. Now, cord needs to start about 8 inches long and then knotted firmly into a loop. Okay, as you see here, this circle, these discs of fabric, of which there are 2, is round about 1.5 inches across, diameter across, but that varies. So you can go right down to quite small, this little tiny one here, or quite large, which is, this one in here, quite large ones. And it really is up to you, and it's determined sometimes by the fabric as well, if you've got a lovely fabric you want to show off. Okay, step 1, after you've cut out your fabric, open it out and then place your knotted piece of cord across the middle of the bottom fabric. You can still see the right size of the fabric. Place the other disc of fabric on top of the cord and make a sandwich. So you can see the knot is coming from one side and the loop is coming from the other. And you will put a pin in there, and this is to stop the loop and the knot sliding through to the other side. So just trap that knotted cord here, like so. Now, my next example is done in a contrasting thread, and this is to show you exactly where to stitch and to be careful not to have a too small seam allowance. Seam allowances are very, very important in the cherry blossom brooches and necklaces and cord magic, because if that seam allowance is way too small, when you turn it through, you'll again get fraying graduate through your seam. Okay, now the seam is quite a tight seam. It is 3 stitches, which are running stitches, and then a back stitch. So your back stitch is a locking stitch. So that will lock off your thread that you have stitched, and it then enables you to pull your thread quite tightly without it pulling up your fabric and gathering it. So you have a good tight seam line. Okay, and you can see here I've gone through the base of the knot here, making a few extra stitches with the loop then coming out of the gap. as you can see here, where I've stopped and started my stitching. Okay, here's one with the correct matching thread, which you can't see very well obviously because it's a matching thread, with still the needle attached with double thread. This was done in a double ordinary sewing thread. Okay, so the next stage is, now you've sewn this all together, is to grab hold of the cord, and I'm using 1 millimeter thickness cord here. There can be, can get it even thinner than 1 mil. You can get 0.5 of a mil, which is very, very fine. This one I like. It's a bit more substantial, doesn't tangle. Okay, 1.5. Right, now push the disc of fabric over the knot. Okay, pulling hard on the cord so you can grab hold of the base of the cord. You can see here the knot is now inside your little disc, and you can now see the right side of the fabric. Now with your finger and thumb, roll around all the seam areas to get this into a disc or a circle shape. You can see here. And then bring your needle and thread to the surface of the right side of your fabric, like so. So now that's on the top. Okay, it looks like that. And you can have a whole lot of these done to that stage. Like a production line. And then the next step is, so this one, there's another one here to show you, like that, all ready to go, like this, and they're nicely rounded. Okay, good. Now you can do other shapes as well. This shape as well, it was a hexagon to start with, and you can see the sides. Now I must correct myself, this was actually a pentagon. This has got 5 sides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see the cord then comes out of the center of one of the flat edges, not at the point. That would be too difficult to anchor the knot, and it's possible that would come out. So to the side is the best option there. The good thing about shaped pieces is that your side becomes the middle. So for doing this sectioning off, which I'm going to show you on the disc because it is the hardest one to do, is this one makes it easier because it's just halfway along the straight edge. Okay, so let's move on back to the disc one. This one here has then been lightly stuffed with fibre fill. Just move those ones out of the way. Just ordinary stuffing fibre fill, but don't overstuff it. If you overstuff it, number one, it'll be really hard to join up, and number two, you can get stuffing coming out. Okay, so when you have stuffed your little disc and you've used a tool, a stuffing tool or a chopstick to help you do that, you're going to ladder stitch the join together. So turning in the raw edges, and now I'm going to go from side to side. Now ladder stitch is also that stitch that is used to sew the back of a soft toy. It goes from side to side, weaving from side to side, grabbing a little bit of fabric and then pulling that thread so you can't really see where the joint is, and that's the whole idea with ladder stitch. You should just see just a little smidge of stitching, but nothing that is obvious. Right, so when I get to the end of that, I'm going to then anchor that off, work a little bit away around, give it a bit of a wiggle with the stuffing to get it into the corners, and then I'll cut that off. Right, so now comes the decoration part, and this is the fun part of the exercise. Sometimes I make these just into little discs, and this is an example here of a disc. It's got a little center, like a little belly button, but the edges are glove stitched, or you can just overcast it. Just gives a little bit of interest, takes the plainness off. But if you've got a lot of different shapes going on, especially in a necklace, it's nice to have a plain piece or a plain disc there, just to make it a little point of difference. And there's a tiny, tiny one there too. Okay, like the little tiny ones. A bit fiddly, but they're really, really cute. Okay, let's go back to decoration of this one. And this is where the little instructional piece of paper comes into its own. This gives you the plan of how you stitch the sectioning off to get it fairly even. Okay, so we all like even, but you will notice though, the section's actually like little pie wedges, but they're evened off in 5 pieces of thread, and that again looks more pleasing to our eye. There's nothing to stop you sectioning off in 6 if you wish to. Your approach would be slightly different, and I would suggest you would draw another little instructional piece like this one if you were going to do 6 to follow. Okay, so what I'm going to be using now, and you can use many different types of thread to do this sectioning off. You can use Sashiko thread, you can use silk ribbon. This one here is done in hand-dyed silk ribbon. You can do it in 6-strand embroidery thread, but today I'm using something completely different, which is called Jima tape. So Jima tape is made of pure cotton. It's Japanese. It is available in my shop along with all my patterns, and it also is available in these little kits of different colours, and there's 5 meters in each card, so you get a chance to have a try of Jima tape. Jima tape you can embroider with, you can Sashiko with. It is a very, very fine tape. It's very strong and gives you a little bit of more interest to your work because it sits flat, but it looks it looks somewhat different to anything you've used probably before. Okay, so you can come through, we like to bury our knot into the center of your little stuffed disc. Okay, now you can come in through where the cord is or come in where your ladder stitch is, it doesn't really matter. Find about center. If you're really conscious of this, put a mark so you can follow it and pop your knot. I think we all know that if we're being quilters in the past, is to get that knot into or between your thread. If you have a little bit showing, like I have here because I had quite a long tail, then just chop that off a bit closer to the knot and then pull it through. As you can see there, it's now disappeared. Now I'm going to do 2 single stitches, one coming through here to the other side. So I'm going straight through the other side, and I'm actually using a chenille needle this time, not a Sashiko needle. I'm using a chenille needle. Chenille needle has a nice big eye. It's probably either an 18 or a 20 size, and it does, because the eye is nicely large, it does not damage your thread, any type of thread. It is a very good standby needle if you want a nice big thread, easy to thread because of the eye, and still has a sharp point. So it's like a tapestry needle really, but with a sharp point. Okay, now I'm going through the center several times and pulling it. This is under tension now, and the reason why we want that is it indents the center and it gives you an area to keep going back to, okay, and sculpts the shape, and with the stuffing that enables that to happen. Okay, so we now fold the thread over, go back to the middle. That's number 1. We do that again on the other side of the cord, back to the middle, like so, and then straight down the center, and that will give you the letter Y. Okay, like so. Now get yourself wrapped around the cord like so, and then all you've got left to do is section off the other two big areas. So always go back to the middle and go like so, and then pull because you want this to be sculpted, and then pull. Okay, now the rest is completely up to you how you finish this. I will do an extra stitch through the middle so that last loop of shaping does not loosen. And now I will either put French knots, colonial knots in the center, and I'm just adjusting that so it's a little bit more even. That's better. I will now either put knots in the front and the back, French knots, colonial knots, or I will use size 6 seed beads. Okay, size 6 beads, 6 seed beads have a lovely big eye, and because of that you only need to have one in one side and one on the other. And the bonus is there are not a problem with your chenille needle getting these onto your work. So you do not have to change needles down to a bead needle unless you have then gone down to much finer beads. Now I'm going to go through at least twice so the bead will sit correctly, so it should sit up on its side, not with the eye showing where you put your thread through. So, and we're just about finished. Now this is so open to interpretation. You can do so much with these. You can especially if they're hexagon shaped ones, you can put things on the points. You can use groups of beads in the center if you don't want to use a single bead. As I said, you can put knots on. And now I'm just going out to the side just as locking in that, and I'm going to then cut that off. So that is how you make a little scissor pull. Now if you were going to put this onto the end of a cord, it's exactly the same principle. So a drawstring cord in a bag, it's exactly the same principle. You still do the action of pulling the fabric over the knot. So if you can imagine that was in a drawstring, you pull the thread, the fabric over that knot. So it's exactly the same principle. This now is like a half hitch and goes on. If I take this one off, you can see how this works, like so. Put your cord through the hole, in this case your zipper end, and slide your piece through it, and then it is trapped in your piece like so. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial on cherry blossom cord magic. They're fun things to make. They cost practically nothing. The only thing you need to be aware is to locate your wax cotton cord, of which I have this also in my shop. And if you want something as a little gift for someone to get them started making their own cord magic, I have a pattern that has all the fabric in there with the cord already tied to be able to make 3 of these. And this is a great gift, especially for a beginner sewer. All the instructions are in there. The map is in there for your final stitching. So thank you everyone for listening today.